the cultures issues in the play therapy is actually on when we're talking about the cultures issues part, it's not only under the play therapies that we talking about because actually every time when we're talking about education as well, is actually the importance of the culture sensitivity is very important. Okay, so the concept of the culture is actually is the configurations of the learned behavior and the results of the behavior whose component elements are shared and transmitted among the members of a particular society. So it means that culture is actually is relative that guide the behavior of the people in a society or the community, and they are passed on from one generation to the next generation. Why? As when we discuss about the play therapy, not only play therapy under education, is actually culture's parts. Culture sensitivity part is actually is the things that we need to be known on, especially under Malaysia multicultural environment. Is actually the parts that we need to be have such sensitivity also. Okay. So usually when we talk about the cultures, inside there will have the elements. Cultures is actually has the normative value and it prescribes do and don'ts which are binding on the members of the society. So it's actually sometimes okay, there are some things that be happening, but in different cultures, they actually have the different perspective on it. And so under this is actually culture is a group of the phenomena and cultural practices are passed on from generations to generations. Elements of the culture shall have the language, nationality, sex educations, professions, ethnic group, religion, social class, corporate cultures, and family cultures, the values, norms, attitudes, sport, wears, and costume, and so on. Okay, as like when we teaching the cultures part in the um, early childhood setting, usually we are more concentrated on just talking about the conceal, our foods, and the language. Okay, so it's actually when we're talking about the cultures that not only this parts, okay? So cultures is actually is learned and sometimes it's unconscious. Okay, as like have been mentioned before, the collective unconscious part. And each cultures is a shape, integrate, is a symbolic. When we talking about the art part, is actually there will be more likely coming back is a culture symbolic part. So as we talking about the same play therapy, actually the sensitivity of the culture is very important. You need to know about which the clients, which races are them are. So the things that they're choosing sometimes they will be linked back to the culture's belief and the value, belief and their values also. Okay. And also culture is a dynamic, it's a relative, and it's a universal. Okay. So the determinants of the cultures that will be taught through the religions, language, education, political philosophy, and also the social structures. And if we go into smaller system, it's actually family cultures is also the part of the cultures that we haven't mentioned about. Okay. Let's just watch this part. What will be talking about the cross cultures difference and the similarities.
Now, let's turn our attention to differences and similarities in behaviors across cultures in organizational settings. Culture is the set of shared values, often taken for granted, that help people in a group, organization, or society understand which actions are considered acceptable and which are deemed unacceptable. Gerrit Hofstede, a Dutch researcher, studied workers and managers in 60 countries and found that specific attitudes and behaviors differed significantly because of the values and beliefs that characterize those countries. The two primary dimensions that Hofstede found were the individual collectivism continuum and power distance. Individualism exists to the extent that people in a culture define themselves primarily as individuals rather than as part of one or more groups or organizations. At work, people from more individualistic cultures tend to be more concerned about themselves as individuals than about their work group. Individual tasks are more important than relationships, and hiring and promotion are usually based on skills and rules. Collectivism, on the other hand, is characterized by tight social frameworks in which people tend to base their identities on the group or organization to which they belong. At work, this means that the employee-employer links are more like family relationships. Relationships.
Okay, what I stop on it first, okay? Maybe I skip out to the video step part because on our side it's actually have moved.
In order to be successful to be in anything, you need to master your psychology. Most people they came for investment and trading, they just want to make money fast.
Kristen, now is that okay already?
Now, let's turn our attention to countries and found that specific countries. The two primary dimensions that Hofstede found were the individual collectivism continuum and power distance. Individualism exists to the extent that people in a culture define themselves primarily as individuals rather than as part of one or more groups or organizations. At work, people from more individualistic cultures tend to be more concerned about themselves as individuals than about their work group. Individual tasks are more important than relationships, and hiring and promotion are usually based on skills and rules. Collectivism, on the other hand, is characterized by tight social frameworks in which people tend to base their identities on the group or organization to which they belong. At work, this means that the employee-employer links are more like family relationships. Relationships are more important than individuals or tasks, and hiring and promotion are based on group membership. Power distance, which might also be called orientation to authority, is the extent to which people accept as normal an unequal distribution of power. Uncertainty avoidance, which might also be called preference for stability, is the extent to which people feel threatened by unknown situations and prefer to be in clear and unambiguous situations. Masculinity, which might more accurately be called assertiveness or materialism, is the extent to which the dominant values in a society emphasize aggressiveness and the acquisition of money and other possessions as opposed to the concern for people, relationships among people, and overall quality of life. Hofstede's framework has recently been expanded to include long-term versus short-term orientation. Long-term values include focusing on the future, working on projects that have a distant payoff, persistence, and thrift. Short-term values are more oriented towards the past and the present and include the respect for traditions and social obligations. Hofstede's research presents only one of several ways of categorizing differences across many different countries and cultures. His findings, however, are now widely accepted and have been used in many organizations. The important issue to remember at this point is that people from diverse cultures value things differently from each other, and that people need to take these differences into account as they work.
Okay, so this one is actually on when we're talking about the cultures part, it's usually that hotels is the part that we will be using as the supporting approach that we will be talking on. What for me? Mhm. Okay. Okay, so this is what the five cultures dimensions that taught by Hostel. Okay, is actually the identity, focus on the degrees that the society reinforce or in the individual or collective achievement interpersonal relationships. Okay, so under the identity part, the individualisms, there will be more likely mentions about the freedoms of the individualism. Okay, so means that 它是个人主义的这个角度。Okay, the co-distance are usually there will be more concentrated on me and others, and their key element concepts that will be preferred concepts of preferred in communications. But in collectivism part, we will be more likely is the group harmony in and outside the group. Okay, so usually this one there will be talking about the relationships are more important than the task. So this one is actually is the individualism and the collectivism parts that influence our belief and our perspective in the cultures. Okay, so 如果你是比较个人主义的信念跟群体主义的信念 this one is actually individual or collectivism. This one is actually is your belief behind you will be influence you. Okay, so as like when we work together with others also, if you believe it's more individualism's part, usually there you will be more concentrated on communications well, and then you actually will be sometimes you will be more settled down will more concentrate on me as a man person, but in the collectivism part is actually you need to be inside the groups and in the cultures that to be have. Okay, so besides that, okay, there will be mentions about the power system that focus on the degree of the equality and inequality between people in the country or the society. So there we have the higher power distance that respect for the status or powerful dependent. So the key elements there will be centralizations part. Then for the lower power distance, there will be more things like people is equality. Okay, 所以权柄比较像是就是从上到下。Okay, like mostly like our country is actually we are more on high power distance rather than the low power distance. Okay, because we seldom things that people is equality. If you taught in the career parts that is actually we are more higher power distance. Okay, so 我们是比较有那种阶级式的一种模式的一个状态。Okay, then for the low power distance, usually there will be more likely under the individualism. Okay, 因为我们看每个人都是平等跟同样的权柄。Okay, then the gender focus on the degree of traditional gender role of achievement, control, and power. Okay, we got things as a masculinity. The core value is winning, and usually there will be have the co-distance among man or woman. This one is depending on the culture. 所以是父职主义还是母职主义的这一种情况。Okay, this one is the power among man and woman. Then the material success is a dominant value. But on another part, okay, what we call as the feminism, okay, femininity is about caring for others. Okay, so they are usually what separate into two is care or needed care. Okay, usually there will be fight for caring for the weak and preservation is the dominant. Okay, so this is why the multicultural perspective keep coming up. Okay, for those weaker part persons, we need to be fight for them. So this is actually under the gender values of the feminisms that we mentioned on. Okay, then besides that, we'll have a time focus on the degree the society embrace on long or short-term devotions or to the traditional forward-thinking values. For the long-term orientations, well, we actually will be seeing that is a long-term benefit, serve the goals, not the projects only. Okay, then the key element is to thrive and saving are good. Okay, then but for the short-term value, we actually are saving the fast and proper or not quick result are expected. Okay, so usually you can be seeing that is actually in Malaysia country, we are more collectivism because we are more concentrated on short-term orientations one also. Okay, and uncertainty, there will be focused on the level of avoidance or the tolerance for the uncertainty and ambiguity within the society. So the uncertainty avoidance is the core value is certainly. Then usually we were talking about truth and false only. And what is the differences is the dangerous one. Okay. So this is actually the overview among the individualisms and the collectivism part. Okay, under individualism, there will be more high power distance and then masculinity and long-term oriented and uncertain avoidance. But in the collectivism part, there will be low power distance and femininity, short-term oriented and uncertainly tolerance. Okay, so this is actually what about talking by the approach. Okay, when we're talking about the cultures part. Okay, so why Okay, what the things that make us differences usually? It's actually if we through the observations of our our hair, our eye colors, skin colors, and the types of the family, body shapes, height, and so on. All this is actually the things that make us different. Okay, then what make us special on is actually what you have that no one else did not have, and then what can you do that no one else can do on. Okay, but why we need to be learn and know about this part is actually this one is to prevent the biases and the bully cases that be happening among our society. Okay, so if feeling bad about themselves, jealous of the talents, and feeling that they are not very good at something, jealous of the friendships and so on, things that actually that will be happening among if we did not understand about we did not have the multicultural knowledge and the skills and the awareness on it. It's actually there maybe have some things that might be happen. Okay, so what may be bullies on the races, the money, disabilities, all this is actually the things that we need to be aware on it. We need to know that is that we have the bias among the different races or the different persons that are among us. Okay, so we all have the right to play and be happy. Okay, so how could besides that, when we're talking about the multicultural as well, we actually need to sing others' talents rather than this one is actually later we will be talking about the Gestalt therapy. It's more concentrate on we actually need to be seeing more talents and the strengths of the persons rather than seeing the weaknesses of the person. It's actually last time when we're talking about psychology as well, we actually are cure for those the weaknesses and the things that we did not develop on it. But in the positive psychologies, the new perspective that we think on, we need to see the person's talents and their strengths in their life and then build up their talents and their strengths to let their life can be going into more thrifted life. Okay, so how cultures actually there will be affects the personality. Okay, I stop at here. We start out and then we go to the video.
Personality is more than just genes. A large part of who we are.
Decisions that we make are influenced by the culture that we grew up in. So where does this influence start? Think all the way back to when you learned manners. You were probably scolded for engaging in behavior that was considered rude in your culture. Conversely, you were probably encouraged to engage in behaviors that are considered to be polite. Now, as you were conditioned to engage in more polite behaviors, you subconsciously picked up on patterns that influenced how you behave. These patterns are highly influenced by the values of the culture that you grew up in. But not all cultures hold the same values. Some cultures tend to encourage behaviors that are loud, boisterous, and competitive. Others encourage quiet, respectful, and more humble behaviors. Depending on the culture where you live, you probably picked up on these values, and they have definitely influenced your decisions and your personality. Researchers have been studying the connections between culture and personality for a long time, and in this video I'm going to attempt to explain two spectrums that researchers have created to define cultures. The culture's place on these spectrums highly influences the personality traits and the behaviors of the people within that culture. So culture is not determined by borders. As you'll see throughout the rest of this video, people learn lessons from cultures that are created from people within a certain country, occupation, class, gender identity, or other differences. For example, just because the country you live in has an individualist culture does not mean you are bound by individualist ideas. So keep this in mind throughout the rest of the video. Let's get started by talking about individual versus collectivist culture. Individualism focuses on the individual, just as the name implies. People living in an individualist environment prioritize self-improvement of themselves and satisfying their own needs before the rest of those of their community. Why? Well, individualist cultures believe and teach that if everyone takes care of themselves, then the entire group should thrive and then become self-sufficient. Individualist cultures put a lot of stress on independence and self-reliance. Those that live in this type of culture tend to be very self-sufficient and driven workers, but are weaker whenever it comes to collaboration and teamwork. They usually struggle handing off responsibility. Now, in general, these people usually distance themselves psychologically and emotionally from one another, since working with others is more of an option than a requirement for success. In the media, we often see individualist characteristics associated with men, people in urban settings, and the Western culture. So what about collectivist cultures? People living in a collectivist environment are taught to focus on the needs of the group before they focus on their own individual needs. They associate their identity to the role and function in a larger group. These groups can include families, teams at work, or the entire nation. Collectivist societies teach people that everyone will benefit when they start to look out for one another. Harmony and interdependence between group members is highly valued among people in this type of environment. Now, unlike their individualist counterparts, members of collectivist cultures tend to be extremely close to each other psychologically and emotionally. Now, this can create an us versus them mindset that separates or looks down upon people that are outside of their group. Collectivist characteristics are generally associated with women, people in rural settings, and Eastern culture. So let's look at another spectrum. Did you grow up in an approach or an avoidance culture? This idea was coined in 1935 to help psychologists identify what makes some conflicts easy to resolve and others difficult to resolve. Where you lie on this spectrum can highly influence how you make decisions. So, what is approach versus avoidance? Humans typically want to approach and move towards pleasurable things, and they typically want to avoid and move away from negative or painful things. It's very similar to Freud's pleasure-pain principle. The idea of approach versus avoidance was measured when an experiment was conducted on rats in 1948. The rats were exposed to different positive and negative stimuli. Researchers then measured the strength of their pull towards the stimuli. The most interesting results from this experiment revealed that the closer the rats were to the item that they were either approaching or avoiding, the stronger their pull was in either direction. Now, this can be applied to humans and how they make their decisions and categorize conflict. But what does it have to do with the culture where you grew up with? Because that's kind of the topic of this video, right? The culture helps to teach you at a young age what to approach and what to avoid. Culture doesn't teach you to avoid physical pain and approach food. Those things are instinctual to all humans. The things we learn to approach and avoid through culture appeal to a higher need. One example of this is something called uncertainty avoidance. The uncertainty avoidance of a culture is a measure of how that culture responds to novelty and uncertainty. How does a culture deal with ambiguity? Are changes welcome in the nation, or does the culture approach stable, traditional rules and customs? Now, in some research, I've found that countries who generally score high in neuroticism tend to be high in uncertainty avoidance. Those countries usually have a more formal system of rules that try to minimize cultural or situational ambiguity, and the citizens are uninterested in changing them. These cultures tend to be more conservative, more emotional, and usually xenophobic. Families in these cultures tend to have more traditional gender roles too. Schools have more structured learning, and children are taught to trust that their teachers have all of the answers. Children are also taught that the outside world may be a hostile place. Religions associated with the uncertainty avoidance include Catholicism, Islam, Judaism, and Shintoism. Conversely, countries low in neuroticism and low in uncertainty avoidance tend to have fewer laws and regulations, and their citizens are much more interested in politics. These cultures are often more open to change and more tolerant of diversity, and people within these cultures tend to suppress their emotions more. Families in these cultures usually have looser gender roles, and their schools have a more open-minded learning. As a generality, teachers are allowed to say that they don't know, and students are encouraged to question authority. Children are also taught that the outside world is benevolent and that they should not persecute others based on their beliefs. Religions associated with low uncertainty avoidance include Protestantism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism. So where do you fit in? Uncertainty avoidance is just one concept that is influenced by a culture's personality and how it influences the decisions and behaviors of the people within that culture. What were you taught to avoid? What were you taught to approach? And how does the culture where you grew up in influence what you consider to be comfortable and uncomfortable? I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to watch some of the other.
Okay, which here is actually for this part, it's very important that when we are spending the time with our client, we need to know that what is actually is a perspective of their belief behind him or her. Okay, so this is actually how the cultures influence the personality development. It's actually we are influenced by the individualism and also the collectivism, both sides. Okay, so this is actually the structures that under on we are, and how it's actually we need to be knows about the similarities and the differences, and also need to know about discriminations and then the diversity. Okay, so it's actually when we're talking about the diversity is actually that makes the life be more interesting. Okay, if you can see things that if everyone seems like the robot, and then the students and children that we're training out is also look like old Sam. Okay, so nowadays we keep mentions about the inclusive of educations for all. Is actually is the perspective of the multicultural perspective what we need to be thinking on. we need to know that when we're talking about inclusive, not only about the special needs children inside our classroom, is also talking about the different races and also about the different socio-economic levels of the families in our center and the kindergarten. 他们的经济能力的状况 and then different family cultures in the children's development environment also. Okay. So what is actually matters difference? Okay. It's actually just now I've mentioned already. Okay, your hair color, your eye, skin color, height, and the type of the family. And it's actually many things matters really different. What you have been sharing before on last week is actually we know that our overall our experience, okay, the life that we have been going through is actually each of us is really different, and all these differences is made us become the personality who am I. Okay. So what things make us spacious also? Okay, this is actually the things that you need to be thinking about and then and look on it and think on it. So as when we are spending the time to with our client, it's actually the things that we need to be looked at again. What things make me different and what things make me spacious. And also we need to know about what is actually the differences of the clients with me, and then what is the spacious among the client. Okay, so same as when we work together with the children also, we need to know all this. Okay, this PPT is actually you can be used to teach your children also, okay, to let them to know about that there will be have the different types of the persons around us. Okay, so we can call this mix of the different people living together as a diversity. Okay, so in our world, okay, it's actually there will be have the many different types of the persons around us. But we need to be learning to be respecting differences. So when a person does not respect the different qualities and the opinions of others person or group, this can often called as a discriminations. Okay, when we talking about discrimination, it's actually it's an unfair treatment or bullying of one particular person or a group of people. Often this unfair treatment is actually because of the person differences. Is actually this one is coming back if we did not understand each other's. If you sometimes you will be things that why this person okay have some wired actions. So we will be things that is a wired persons in our eyes. But it's actually as we did not spend time to understand them, when we did not on their perspective and their world perspective thinking thing is actually there will be coming up the discriminations things may happen surround us. Okay, so respecting each other's is actually is very important to know that we are different and each of us are unique. Okay, being different is what makes us all spacious and interesting. Okay, so sometimes it's actually when we are spending the time with those clients, they actually will be thinking about 为什么我跟别人不一样 Why I different with others? Why I cannot join in for the group? Why I cannot play together with my peers? So all this is actually is the perspective that when we are seeing difference in the group, sometimes we are never to joining in. So if you are never to be balanced, okay, the feelings and the emotions that you have been built on is actually there will be causes that they are never their self-esteem will be dropped also. So this is actually why we need to be know on the multicultural perspective to let us to be more understand on it. Okay, so how might people discriminate others within the school? Okay, so when we are in school, there will be have the delivery have leave someone out of the game or the group and say something mean about another person's skin color, religion, disability, or other personal differences. Tell other persons that their personal belief and opinions are wrong, and discuss a personal belief and opinions in an unkind way. Okay, so this is actually the things that we need to be build up the environments that is really receive and then it's diverse environments that we accept every type of the persons in our center or the kindergarten or inside the therapy rooms also. We need to know that we need to check on our own belief and the biases. Is that I have my own biases that causes our relationships among the therapist relationships among the client is actually cannot be trusted. So this is actually the things that we need to be dealing on. Okay, so how can we dealing with the discriminations? If you're taught that you were being bullied or discriminated against, what do you think you should do? Okay, this one is actually is the parts that we can be discussed on also. Okay, if you heard someone being unkind at school, who will you tell and what will you do on? If you heard someone being unkind at home, what will you tell and what will you do so? So this is actually the parts that we need to teach our children also. This part is actually under social science and social studies. We actually have the parts that we're talking about the multicultures. Then we need to be let our children to know on it also. So when the play combinations of the play therapies part is actually when every time we're designing our play therapy seasons, we need to be look back of the designing or the materials that we prepare on. Is that have any discriminations that be happening among on it or not? Okay, so what to do if discriminations is happening among us? Okay, if you thought you were being bullied because of your differences, what do you think you should do on? And then if you heard someone being unkind about differences at school, well, who would you tell? What will you do so? And if you heard someone being unkind about differences at home, who will you tell and what will you do so? Okay, so this is actually when we're using the Gestalt therapies parts, we actually can be coming in something like this to let the person to know that your individual differences and then let them to see their strengths and their talents among on each other to let them to build up themselves. Okay, so if someone looks at or sound different to you, this is actually is a good thing because we all are different. We all have the right to our own thoughts and belief, and this is what made us our school and our world a special class. So this one is actually the encouragements that to let us have the environments that really voice out what you are thinking of. Okay, although sometimes our thinking perspective you will be feels that there's a little bit difference among in the group, but you can ever to have the place to voice out what you have. Okay, so differences are what make us all spacious. Okay, so we might have brown eyes, we might have green eyes, we might have sister, we might have the stepbrother, we might love dancing, we might love basketball. All these things is actually is as what makes us become different and unique on. Okay. So if someone looks at behave or sounds different to you, embrace their differences. So the diversity is actually a positive thing to do, have within the society. We all actually are different and we all have the right to our own opinions and belief. And that is what made our school and our world a special class. It's actually this one is more likely is under the individualism perspective walk. So sometimes actually collectivism, we will be mute on the individual's spacious parts. But this one is actually is coming into the balance already. Okay, so sometimes maybe there will be have the unconscious collectivisms that the perspective and belief will be causes that the unbalance on it. Okay, and this is the parts that about the multicultures. Okay, then now I will go on to the Gestalt play therapy. Okay, so the Gestalt play therapy is mentioned by the peers. What they have been saying on is actually I'm not in this world to live up to others people's expectation, nor do I feel that the world must be lived up to mine. Okay, so this is actually under the humanist parts that we keep mentions on. Is more likely sometimes okay. This one if in under collectivism, sometimes it's actually have the changes on it. Because if we're using this side of a concept individualism, sometimes it will be causes the relationships among the client and the family that will be broken also. So this is the things that we need to be thinking of. OK，所以这个信念的部分，它其实会影响到后续治疗可能面对的挑战 and 和状况。Okay, so this is why individualism and the collectivism perspective believe when we are choosing the ways that to helping our client, we need to thinking on. Okay, 你不能跟你的client 说就不用管你的家人。Okay, you cannot say to the clients that what is your children's and no need to thinking about okay their relationships among their parents and the families. So this is actually about the perspective that they have. Okay, but of course another part we need to know that our life is we are live for ourselves. It's not because of others. Sometimes our clients that maybe have some emotional problems is because they too care about others thinking about themselves. So this is why Fritz Perls mentions about this part. This word to live up. I'm not in this word to live up to others people's expectations. No, I feel that word must be live up to mine. So this is why he mentions about. So under the theory of the personality of the Gestalt therapies, that mentions about a person as by the differentiating self from others by connecting self and others. These are the two functions of the boundary. The boundary between self and the boundary between the environment must be permeable to the allow for the exchanges yet firm enough to enable an autonomous actions. So this is why just now I'm going through the multicultural perspective first, okay? When we're talking about individualism and collectivism, both part is actually we need to have the boundary and the balance on it. So when the boundary becomes unclear, loss or impermeable, mental and emotional disturbance will be results on that. So the basic philosophy behind that is a neutral view of the humans is a humanistic and essential, emphasize individual choice and responsibility on their life, and also holistic perspective. People can't be separate from the environment. People cannot be divided into parts. There is no separation between the mind and the body. Okay? So the human motivation is behavior is motivated by the drift to the satisfied of biological needs, psychological needs, interpersonal needs, and human regular behavior to facilitate their growth. Okay, so this is actually is more likely is the holistic views already. Okay, like what we have been mentioned on the Abraham Maslow is actually also on this part that okay the biology, psychology, and interpersonal needs that we need to be had. Then the natures of the people, the most important area of the conscious are the thoughts and feelings that people are experiencing at the moment. Okay, so what you are thinking and what you are feeling on. This one is actually the parts that we need to discuss on. As like behaviorism, last time we are more concentrated on the behaviors, what you are doing on. But coming into the humanities, thoughts, feelings is actually is the experience and the process moments that we need to be gone to. So the normal healthy behavior occurs when the people act and react as a total organism. Many people fragment their life, distributing concentration and attentions among several things at one time. So the view of the human nature is more positive. Okay, and people are capable of becoming self-regulating beings who can achieve a sense of unity and integration of their life. With full of awareness of the self-regulation develops and the total person type control, and with a highly level of concentration undistracted by the environment and environmental stimulus, mentally health people can solve their problems by themselves, resolve their conflicts with others, and know when the resolution is impossible. Then the key to success is the adjustment in the development of the personal responsibility and responsibility for one life and their environment. OK， 所以就是人与人，人与自己，人与人，还有人与世界的这个关系。So this means that about the relationships of the person with their own, and then the person with others, and then person with the overall environment. Okay, 来看一下 okay what you have been seeing in these pictures. First view, like Rebecca, start from Rebecca. The best. Okay. How about Suma? Okay, 2% fast also. 2% fast as Crystal. Okay, the car. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, the middle, that one. Okay, how about Stephanie? Okay, like chess. Okay, the different perspective. Okay, it's actually when we have the from our perspective, it's actually there will be have the differences on it. Okay, but it's actually all the answers are correct. We do not have any right and wrong correct answer. Huh? Okay, so this is actually what the Gestalt therapy mentions on. Coming back again is the person is the center that you need to be seen on. 你的角度是什么? But you need to be present out, okay? What is your perspective on to thinking on your own life? Okay, so the healthy person will focus sharply on one needs at a time while letting others needs to the background or ground. So when the need is met, it is relegated to the background and the new needs comes into focus. So the smoothly of the functioning figure ground relationship characterize the healthy personality. Neurotic people are unable to attend to one needs and time and use their potential to manipulate others to do for them what they have not done for themselves. Okay, so this is actually when we're talking about the psychology, health, and dysfunctional. Okay, how can we see it? Health is the interconnected with the environment and is aware of the needs and is able to satisfy the needs. And it must be take responsibility for the choices and assign the meaning to experience. Okay, so the dysfunction is under the Gestalt therapies that will be talking about the denying what is unpleasant and emotion are symbolic of the unmet needs has unfinished business. Okay, 就是还未完成的一个他想要完成达成的一个东西，所以导致他有一些情绪的状况，或者有一些状况出现了。So people cause themselves problems by not handling their life in the way, okay, by lacking contact with their environment, conference, incorporate themselves into others and the environment into themselves, unfinished business, unfulfilled needs, and unfinished situation. Okay, so this is fulfilled needs or unfinished situation is actually it's more likely like what we told in the Maslow that the needs that we need to be achieved on. Okay, so this one is actually is more likely is under the unfinished business, and the conference is more likely okay is actually we're talking about the boundary among each others when the other's life their emotions and then their feelings is matched together with you, and then you cannot to be cut off the boundary. So sometimes it's actually there will be have some emotionless and then influence the personality growth parts of the persons also. Okay, so the unfinished business lead to the psychological symptoms, like for example, okay, feelings about the past are unexpressed, then the feelings are associated with the distinct memories and the fantasies, then feelings not fully experienced linger in the background and interference with the effective contact, resulting with the preoccupations, comparisons behavior, wariness, and then oppressive energy and self-defending behavior. Okay, so this one is actually it's maybe okay will be causes of the types of the behaviors that be happening in the persons. Okay, then the mechanism of the changes and the growth. Okay, there will be talking about the path to awareness has the two components. Firstly, is the techniques to be sharpen the awareness. Okay, we need to aware on what is actually is happening on Earth. Okay, so we don't see that all that negative feelings and emotions coming up is not the things that we want to be ignore on. We must be aware on it. You need to be aware, and then you're just able to be set on to coming aware of our own defenses. Okay, so when we focus on the present rather than past on the future, okay, unfinished situation for the past outward in terms of the person present experience of them. Okay, this one is actually what we talking before. Okay, under psychoanalysis, we actually is more likely is talking about the unfinished situations that be happening in the past. But coming into the Gestalt therapy, we actually will see whole thing is very important in past, in present, and in the future will be influenced that what situations that we will be do on in presence. Okay, so next step, what I want to be doing on. Okay, so concerns about futures regard as the manifestations that of the current anxiety. So what and how are the focus, not the why. Okay, so 这个是我们不是找出背后的原因，而是我要怎么做 and how to. Okay, what and how is what we concentrate on under the Gestalt. Okay, so what do you do that is a statement concerns in a questions, but it's actually is a part that we're thinking, finding out what is actually happening courses I will be doing on it. And then the next step is what and how I can be overcome on it. So the interpretations are avoided on self-discovery has a greater value on it. Okay, so under the Gestalt, the concerns is a integrate functioning for all aspects of the child, so that the sense, body, emotions, and the intellect are all well coordinated in a creative adjustment. Against that, sometimes the counselor leaks and the other time the children's leaks. Okay, so if we're using the dance play therapy, it's actually we can be let the client to lead on that sessions also, because we trust that all of us are different, and then all of our differences, experience of the life is actually will be interest each others, and then there will be healing and helping each others also. Then contact is having the ability to be completely present in a situation. Okay, so usually under the Gestalt therapies, there will be have the method like I language. Okay, this sorrow, you as in you know what is it. Okay, substitute want for can't is it on client taking responsibility. Okay, and also substitute what and how for why. Okay, what do you feel and not using the why do you feel. Okay, so what we concentrate on the substitutes that we use the words that what and how. And besides that, not gossiping. Okay, talk to people, not about the people. Use an empty chair to talk to. Okay, so when we mention about someone in some situation, it's actually we are not mentions about that person. It's about the situation be happening on it. Okay, so this is a sampling of the counseling methods. Okay, I should, not do you think I should. Okay, so right now I feel and I take what responsibility on it. Okay, so coming back, we give the responsibility to the client. Okay, then we are concentrate on the feel and the thought. Okay, 他的感受跟他的想法。Okay, then the sentences to completions, I helped or hurt myself when I. Okay, so we're finding out what situations that causes I will be doing something like this. Okay, then besides that, the bipolarities is a top on this and I should versus I want. Okay, that I will be sharing about the empty chair. Next week we will be doing the empty chairs also. Okay, use an empty chairs for discussions, and the client sits on the chair to defend on I should and move the other chair to discuss I want. Then next week we will be try for the empty chair on this part. Okay, and my greatest weaknesses, write a paragraph on my greatest weaknesses and why it is a strength. Okay, so this one is actually we are reading, seeing our weaknesses and then changing our weaknesses, and then also the negative experience that we have been going through before to become the strengths on it. 找到它的 weaknesses 跟或者是你的过去负面的经验，变成你在你接下来的生命的一个强点。Okay, so this is actually the empty chairs that the strategies that we will be used under the Gestalt therapy. And besides, okay, integrate the thoughts and feelings for the three closest people, right? I reset, I demand, and I appreciate. Okay, this one we will be going through next week also, but I let you know first. Okay, this is a Gestalt strategy that under that we will be using on, and usually there will be more likely can be the individual therapy or the group therapy also. Okay, then it also have the fantasy games for creating awareness. Okay, the client can fantasize being an animal and try to understand what it feels like. Okay, so sometimes the fantasies play is the part. Okay, so usually the pretend play that we can be using on, and the client can ask and answer the question, one question to form a wise persons. Okay, so sometimes there will be have the changings of the persons that we pretend on. Okay, so this one is actually the one part of the counseling methods that we're using on under the Gestalt play therapy. The last thing is the dream work. Okay, dreaming is actually an awareness of the world. It's piece of the dream from fragments of the personality that must be integrated and describe a dream. List the objects and the client giving a voice to each part and has them converse on it. Okay, I will preparing this one dream. It's actually that one is connected with using the cauldron play therapy strategies to be using on it. But under Gestalt play therapy, it's actually there will be have this type of the strategies coming in also. Okay, so this is actually the empty chair and the awareness wheel that we use on under the both techniques. Okay. And then besides that, sometimes we will be have the clay art, play therapy under this. Then because through this, we actually can be construct and construct the process on it, and then construct and deconstruct the negative into the positive part, and the regressions of the process which we divide into the 3 different types concepts also. Okay, so on this one, okay, next week we will be going through the wheelchair parts, and then we will be try for the using one of the pretend play, okay, for the trapeze one, and also I will try to find it's actually I just left 2 play that we have. Then we will be try for go through the play art therapy also. Okay. Okay, so what Gestalt therapy is actually is a dynamic, person-centered, humanist, process-oriented mode of the therapy that focus attentions on the healthy integrations functioning of the total organism, comprised of the sense, the body, and the emotions, and the intellectuals. OK， 所以它这个 organism 是在讲我们这个人哈，我们这个organism。OK， 所以它是讲全面的一个角度。从我们的 sense starting from the holistic one, starting from our sensations, our body, emotions, and the intellections, the thought and the knowledge parts that we have. Okay. So this one is a Gestalt therapy theory process that's learning concepts of grasping a structure's whole and not just a mechanism's respond to a stimulus. Okay. So it means that we trust that, okay, all the sensations that coming in our sensory is coming into our life also. Sometimes maybe we can't remember those things that coming, the stimulus that coming in, but it's actually our sensations. All this is coming into our experience already. Okay, so this is actually the unconscious feelings part that we have in our part. 因为你的刺激性进来，可能有时候你并没有记得这件事情，但是你的身体 Okay, your body stimulus is actually is helping you remind those feelings already. So this is under the Gestalt. It mentions about is actually the sensation, the stimulus that coming in. All our experience is actually we already received that. Even though I did not memory, okay, you did not memorize the things that be happening, but it's actually through the sensation and the stimulus, is coming into your unconscious parts also. So this is actually sometimes 我觉得我没有这个创伤，但是其实是有的，可是你不知道。Okay, so this is why aware on it is very important. Okay. Okay. This one is a person that they're starting on the Gestalt perspective. Okay, the persons being an therapist, then it's actually they're mostly interested. Okay, mostly okay. The supporting part is a Fritz and a Roma Press. Okay, Fritz was born in Bari, and he actually is a Jewish, and his older sister was killed by the Nazis because he failed the school and he had to leave it. For the short time he worked, then he returned to the school. He decided to study the medicine. During the World War I, he served as a medical corpsman, and he specialized in the physiatry. Okay? Then Laura was born in a wealthy German family, and she was fantastically bright and ambitious, and interested in the modern dance, concert pianist, obtained a doctoral degree in in Gestalt psychology and study essential psychological with the Buber. Okay, so Fitz and Rothschild mix while working in cart groceries, right? Okay, then they actually are the couple. Then lastly, they together form a union, produce a most proactive personal change strategies again. This is the Gestalt therapies that mentioned are by them. Okay, so it's actually Gestalt therapy is a highly experiential therapy also. Okay, as like Pierce wrote on, lose your mind and come to your sense. Gestalt theory is not taught about one's experience. It's every moment of the therapy is an experience to be comfort. Then it's actually is a goal is self-awareness. Okay, this is actually the history context that we need to be know or just go through. Okay, which psychotherapy focus on observing client facial expressions and body positions, and then which libido was seen as a positive pulse or energy characterized by the estimate. Okay, then after that, okay, Fritz had meeting with the Fruits and Simon Freud. Okay, that freed him from the downground of the psychoanalytic thinking. So during the South Africa days, Rora had two daughters. She used her daughters to observe the children's eating and chewing behaviors. And chewing, eating, and digesting become the important themes in the Gestalt therapy also. So when people eat, they bite off what they can chew. When they are exposed to ideas, they mentally chew into digest and ideas of the mental metabolism. Okay, so this is why it's actually 他用吃这东西来去讲消化，来讲我们认知的这个吸收跟接收哈。Okay, how we thinking on she using people eating, biting and chewing things to explain about the knowledge and the ideas and the belief and the values that coming into our mind part. Okay, so the Gestalt therapy was developed in beginning of World War II and has an anarchic roots. It's actually its anti-established or anti-authoritarian position of Gestalt means that nature within the facets of the context. So due to they actually have been increasing the facet stress in USA, and then they establish a common observance on crises in co-recon. Okay, this one is actually the history concepts of the Brisa. Okay, so the Gestalt therapy roots and branches is an integration of the several different intellectuals and historical forces. Okay, start from psychology analysis, developmental psychologists, Gestalt, field therapy, theory, and essential philosophy. Okay, then they're actually influenced by the Fascism and alternate cerebrarians, which focus on the body awareness and is coming into more experiential learning during the workshops and demonstrations. Okay, so it's actually they concentrate on the experiential play and then play therapy part. Okay, 就是体验式的那一种，透过体验的方式来去觉察个人的部分。Yeah. So it's actually continued developed, by the Gustav relational Gestalt therapy and also emotional focus therapy. Okay, so in Gestalt therapy 它后续延伸出来 after that actually continues develop to this, relational Gestalt therapy, and another one is emotional focus therapy. Like psychoanalysis therapy is actually the continuous is developed coming out the objective therapy. Okay. 所以这个是他们整个发展性的轴哈。So the goals of the therapy of the Gestalt is to map whole mind and body, emotion, behavior, and cognitive, past, present, and their futures also. Okay. So the goal of the Gestalt therapy is to become fully capable of an organism, self-regulations, to have the direct immediate awareness of the total perceptions of the field, to establish a contact with the world. Okay, so it means that it's actually they will be very clear about the whole awareness to the whole perceptions field parts. Okay, so the theoretical assumptions under the Gestalt therapy: human perceive things as a whole, and the whole is more than the sum of its part. Life is best understood by knowing the subjective, internal rather than the objective and external. And awareness is ever changing, and each moment is one of choice based on evolving awareness. And we are the creators of our own destiny. Okay. And also the path to wholeness and health is to interact with nature, with others people without losing one's individuality. People are manipulative, avoid self-reliance, and are not willing to accept their own perception as valid. Okay, so changes happen in the present. So this is the theoretical assumptions that behind the Gestalt Gestalt therapy. Okay, then the theory of the ontology under Gestalt. All forms of the human psychology dysfunctional are attempt at simplifying experience, averting uncomfortable feelings, or managing difficulty adjustment. So therefore, they are considered creative adaptations to be in hospitalized situation in a person's life. It's actually under the educational psychology, we also using this concepts also. When we're talking about the adaptations and modifications and then differentiation strategies that we're designing our lesson, it's actually is a concept that the ontology behind on it. Okay, so the unfinished business lead to the psychology section, just as I mentioned on it already. Feelings about the past are unexpressed. The feelings are associated with the distant memories and fantasies. Feelings not fully experienced linger in the background and interfere with the effective contact, resulting in preoccupations, compulsive behavior awareness, operational energy, and self-defensive behavior. Okay. When we talking about the Gestalt therapy, is actually first having linked the unfolding of the adult personality to as like the peeling of an onion. Okay, so it's break into the different layers on it. Okay, have the phonolic layer, phobic layer, impulsive layer, and expressive layer. Okay, so it's actually like the onion. Most inside is the personality ability. Okay, coming out is the values, attitudes, knowledge, and behavior. So usually we are more likely to think this part, behavior, knowledge, and the attitudes that we have. And then also when we are doing the education as well, we actually are building up this one also, the knowledge, skills, and the attitudes that we have. But usually what influences us is actually our personality and ability and the values that we have, especially for the adults. So when we are building up someone personality and the values that the belief in their life, is actually we need to be using the behavior, knowledge, and building up their behavior, knowledge, and attitude, the knowledge and skills and the attitudes that we need to be building up. But of course, this one is actually the environment influence we building up our values and also the personality that we have. Okay, sometimes some of the theories that we talking about personality more likely is our personality that when we are born, then we are the person types that we are. But some of the theory when we're talking about the personality is about how the environment building up we become the personality we are. Okay, because we will be influenced by our environment also. Okay, so this is under the Gestalt therapy first having mentions about the layers of the neuroses that the person's personality part. Okay, so the priority there will be about the force and distance. Okay, past, present, and then the good and bad about the different aspect of ourselves. Okay, so the past, present, and the good and bad. This one is actually is more likely when we talk about the personality, the personal, and then the shadow part. Okay, so this is actually on the parts that some of the psychologists have been mentioned also. Okay, then the lack of the contact is about superficial relationship with the world. Okay, instead of our way, we need an intimate. And lastly is a converse. It's about the conditions of not contact. Instead of I and you, there is a we. A very unclear experience of the self. So besides that, okay, we also talking about the parts that introjections, projections, and the retroflections. So when we talking about introjections, that will be more likely is about the individual experience something as ourself when it's fact in the belongs to the environment. Okay, sometimes this one is maybe will be the false identifications part. Okay? Then the projections is the individual experience something that in the environment when it fact in belongs to them. Okay, its most likely is a false alienations. Then lastly is the retroflections. It's about the individual hold back a response instead from the environment and substitute in which a response for themselves. Okay, so sometimes there will be like, for example, self-harm and doing poorly in their schools, okay, in their academic parts. Okay, so the Gestalt awareness process models, okay, is like this. Okay, it's starting from, okay, the context, okay, the mix, okay, the needs, okay, retroflections part, and then satisfactions, okay, of the needs and withdrawal, letting go is a confluence, arrogance being of awareness on it, and of needs, okay, deflections, mobilizations, okay, this one is more likely under introjections. Then lastly is the actions to meet the need, okay, the projections well. Okay, 所以找到 the mix of the needs, okay, mix the needs that you need to have, and after that of needs, letting go, okay, and being aware of needs, what's that you want to be have, then prepare for actions to meet the needs that you want to be. Okay, so the mechanism of the pathway of the changes and the growth under the Gestalt therapy is to aware on the two components. Okay, this one also just now mentioned already. Okay, it's a technique to sharpen awareness and become aware of our deficiencies. Focus on present rather than past or future. And what and how are the focus, not the why. And this is actually on the mechanisms when we're talking about the changes and the growth under the Gestalt therapy. Okay. Differences between the psychoanalysis that mentions by Simon Fritz and the peers and Gestalt therapy. Okay, Simon Fritz that will be more concentrated on the past, then reductionities, determinatives, and unconscious. Then the energy system is more likely is seeking on the homeostasis and biological comparisons. But for under peers Gestalt therapy, there will be more concentrate on the presence part and holistic phenomenological dishonor parts and energy system that will be more seeking on more likely is seeking on some, okay, like Simon Fritz, and lastly there will be more closures on it. Okay, so the sum of similarity with the humanities and essential therapies, this one I've been talking before already. Okay, focus in on the here and now. Okay, there will be more concentrate on presence and emphasize on individual freedom and responsibility. Insight-oriented, then it's have the I-DAO relationships. Okay, why is I-DAO relationship? It's actually he's a Jewish. Okay, 我们讲到犹太人的时候 under Jewish is actually what they believe on is actually coming from Bible. Okay, so the Bible inside the I-DAO is actually is more likely like the relationships among ourselves, we and God. Okay, so this one is actually what he mentions in the I-DAO relationships part. Okay, and holistic is the integrations. Okay, this one I-DAO relationship is actually is mentions about the client and the psychologist well. Okay, 所以是我跟他用这个词来去谈论哈。But also differences is more confrontative and directive than humanities, and it's more micro behavior focused than essentials. Okay, so this one is actually is a little bit differences about the Gestalt under the humanities and essentials. Okay, what we call as Gestalt play therapy is the humanities essentials play therapy. 它是两个的 combinations 来的。Okay. So the theory principles of the Gestalt theory are present and criticizes. Okay, as just now I mentioned, is actually the essentials and humanities, and Gestalt is the Gestalt psychology foundations. Okay, so individuals have self-actualizations potentials, and experience can be activate these potentials also. Okay, 所以他相信两个面向哈。Okay， 有 self-actualizations 的能力，这个是从我们 insight well, and then experience outside is actually will be activate the internal potentials also. 所以环境也很重要，这个是两个面向。从里面到外面，外面到里面。Okay, like just now mentions about the like this one, I mean the layers. Okay, personality, ability, values is actually will be influence you, but also the behavior, knowledge, and attitudes outside is actually will be influence your personality and your abilities and values also. So this one is the two ways that there will be influence their development parts. Okay, so the self-actualizations and the self-regulations. Instead of self-actualizations of essentials and humanity, Gestalt therapy will be focused on self-regulations. Okay, it's based on self-awareness, and the process looks like this. An essential step of the equilibrium, descriptions of the equilibrium to the image of the need, sensations, or desire. Okay, so means that we will be coming into the disequilibrium. Okay, like what you have, if you still remember that when we're talking about the cognitive development part, when you're learning something, things coming in, it's actually sometimes there will be have the disequilibrium on it. Then you need to have the new things coming in, and then changing to become into the equivalence part. Okay, so the development of the awareness of the need and sensations on desire is the parts that we will be going through under the Gestalt therapy, and taking actions, helping them return to the equilibrium. Okay, so this is actually the process that we call talking about the changes. Okay, 你发现你不平衡的状态点是什么关键点？ And then next step, you're starting to find out, okay, what actions that I want to be helping myself to become equivalent on it. Okay, so this is actually sometimes we will be changing our behavior or changing our mindset. So this is actually the two perspective parts that we will be going on it. Okay, so an initiation step the equivalent, and then coming something that be happening and causes you this equivalent, and after that you're aware of the needs and the sensations that you need to be have. Okay, like for example, using Loya example, okay, she finding that okay the 空很空虚，这个空在她的脑中出现。Okay, and then this one is actually maybe have some disequilibrium in our deeper part, but we did not aware on it. Okay, so when you're aware on it, you will be finding out what is actually the needs that you be have. Then after that, okay, you can be using the experience and sensations to be finding out more what actually the needs that I did not achieve. Okay, then after that, starting to taking actions to doing something to let my life to become more equivalent. Okay, so this is actually is okay the organization's dynamics that who we are. Okay, how we do ourselves, and then outside part is actually the sensations and the awareness, contextualization, mobilizations of the energy, and then also the contact of the changes of the boundaries that among the peoples and the persons that we meet on, and then withdrawal of the assessment. Okay, so this one is actually the outside circles, and then there will be influence our insights of our who am I. Okay, so this is actually the overview of the Gestalt circles of the experience for overall organizations dynamics part. And so when we talking about organizations dynamics, if we're using the Gestalt therapy to be assessed on it, it's actually what we need to be looked through. Okay, so the goal of the treatment is to help the individual become aware of entire self. All rejected or undervalued parts are integrated into the whole person's. Gestalt therapy is actually concentrate to enhance the awareness. Okay, so the primary roles of the therapies is to help the clients become aware of their needs, sensations, and their desires. Okay, so the Gestalt is actually coming from the German words. It means that undefined or complete form. Okay, so the whole is different or greater than the sum of its part. This one ideas is actually coming back from the Aristotle. And holism under the Gestalt therapy that views mind and body as an inseparable whole is a physical, mental, emotion theory. It's common on their clients' physical position, postures, and gesture. Motor movement represent emotions and cognitive events. Okay, so actually when we are using the Gestalt therapy to doing the narrative strategies, the physical and then all those non-verbal part is actually we need to be recorded down also. 所以你观察记录的时候，这些 non-verbal gestures, postures all you need to be recorded down when you're spending time with the client. Okay. As I just now have mentioned already, also the phenomenological of the Gestalt therapies are interested in direct experience in the therapy. Clients actually are encouraged to drop their baggage and biases and report their direct experience. The direct experience and authenticity is the therapy and the life facilitates their growth. Okay, then the figure ground of the formations process, everyone is actually constantly shift their cognitive or perception focus. So under Gestalt therapy, it refers that as the figure formations progress. Okay? So under this progress, your voluntary control, and you may choose to do something or may choose to do another one, and you can't have it both ways because sometimes something has to be figure and something has to be ground. So in future, okay, that have been doing by Carolyn is actually individuals and the environment are together within a field of the concept interaction. Therapy is not separate from the field. The field is organized so the therapists and the client explore together. And Gestalt therapies there will be more in immediate presence and here and now view. OK， 所以它会直接处理当下现在你要处理的关键一个问题。Okay, so this one just now we have been seen already. Okay, same as, okay, what you have been seeing for first perspective. We're starting from Rebecca. Huh? Okay, a lady. Suman also. Where's in council? Okay, a lady also. About Roya and Stephanie. Okay, okay. So mostly you've seen a lady, okay, but Kristen sees a woman. Okay, how about 小琪? What you seen, son? 你看到什么，小琪? Okay, also a lady. Okay. Oh, so this one is actually different perspective, different thinking only, huh? Okay. So the theoretical perspective, okay, under the Gestalt therapy, I and thou, here and now, what and now. Okay. This one is actually the words that briefly described under the Gestalt therapy. Yeah. Then the contact and the resistance to contact is actually about the exchange of the information between I-ness and the otherness. And it's a perception process. We have met contact through our senses. And it's also be viewed as a contact or boundary disturbance. Symptom arise because of the dysregulations of the boundary between self and the environment. Okay, 所以可能有时候是你的界限出了问题，所以导致你的情绪跟你的状况有些状况哈。And it occurs to a natural process of the contact as an assessment, self-regulation, and new learning are disrupted. Okay, then there will be have the 5 different types of boundary disturbance. Okay, is the interjections, projections, retroflections, diffractions, and conference. Okay, so this one is actually under the boundary disruptions that the types that we use on to be building up the relationship with others part. Right? And the Proston identify 3 specific therapeutic device or processes is the encounter, awareness, and the experiment. Okay, so this is actually is the Gestalt therapies that nowadays that we talking about. Okay, you need to be encounter on it, what is actually is happening. Okay, and then aware on it, then you start to be taking action. Okay, what the experiments mean is actually you try different way to be overcome. Okay, the situations that you have been made of. So the practices of the Gestalt therapy, okay, is actually usually essential human test therapies, they typically avoid the assessment. Okay, as Gestalt therapy was modeled by Bridgefield during workshops and retreats, they focus on pushing people forward towards growth, and there are facets of the self-assessment. Okay. Then in recent, development of the Gestalt therapy have emphasized collaborations and the I-DAO relationships, and informed the consent is very important. The goodnesses of the fits between client and therapy is a strong predictor of positive treatment outcome. So the client with the depression symptoms who are also highly reactive or sensitive to be feedback. Okay, and besides that, the interaction between patients and the therapy is a presence moment. Okay, so the relational psychoanalysis and the relational Gestalt therapy hold a common views about both therapies and the client will bring subjectivity into therapy, neither than subjective view in consider inherent authoritative. Okay, so under the awareness is in the process second phase of the Gestalt therapy. Okay, because on Gestalt therapy itself, well, we have the different perspective. Okay, sorry. Just
Recording in progress.
Chris, just now I've been mentioned until where? This part? Okay. It's okay, I go on. Okay. 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 So the client resistance as to conduct was manifest in physical or muscular. Okay. And also, the Gestalt therapy that we attends closely to client physical movement, gestures, furnishings, and other physical manifestations of the emotion and psychological process. Just how we mentioned already, the parts that we also actually we will be observe the non-verbal parts that we observe on the clients. Okay, and the Gestalt therapy notice clients non-verbal behavior, tightness in the client jaw, repeating opening and closing things. The movement on one hand to the neck several times, reminiscing of occurring of the legs, awareness of fractions of the neck being to emerge. All this is actually the number of behavior we will be recorded down. Okay, while they are in the therapy room. And then it's actually attend closely to client language and the voice quality also, looking client from using it or you to I. So when you are talking about yourself, it can be helpful to use the word I. So are you willing to try that? Okay. So this one is actually when we are doing on the client, the narrative reasons, is actually they will be more likely concentrate on I using the I and those parts. Okay. They're moving client from talking in past tense to present. So when the client talking about a story happened in the past, is actually we will be encourage them to speak as if the event is happening right now. Okay, so this is why we will be talking about using the sitting chair strategies. Okay, 我会把过去经验的或者是可能 okay maybe in future's past we will be let them to be present on here. Okay. So having clients transform their questions into the statement, I want to do instead would you mind. Okay. Notice when the client use passive language, I don't know, maybe, okay. So noticing client voice tone and quality, the changes in client voice may reflect unfinished business or any emotions. And this is actually in the narrative process when we record down, okay, the words that they use, and then you're finding out what actually in when they are describing, okay, the situations that be happening, and then you record down their tone and also the words that they're using on. Okay, you're finding out the passive language that they have been using on when they are talking in some situation. 它一些情景之下，它用出来的词会影响到我们去做分析的部分啊。Okay. So under the Gestalt therapy is an here and now therapies that are all about there and then. The whole point is to get the client to bring their baggage or unfinished business out of their old cardboard and into the present moment. So when that happens, change is possible. Okay, when we come into the third phase of the Gestalt involve application of the Gestalt therapy experiments, a device that create new opportunity for acting in a safely structured situation. The Gestalt experiments are useful treatment method, but they can be abused also sometimes. It's not the technical driven. It's the techniques are device that facilitate awareness and personal growth in the long run. So the techniques is inappropriately used is actually can be fat and antitherapeutic. Okay, so that should be used within the context of an ideal relationships. So coming back again, Okay, the relationship among the client and the psychologist is actually very important. Okay, starting with the feeling, I take responsibility for playing the projections and the reversal technique and the exaggeration experiment. Okay, this is actually a specific Gestalt experiment that usually when we are going through the seasons under the Gestalt play therapy. Is the best on of the Gestalt experiments. There are two different ways to use in empty chair dialogue, working out an internal conflict and working out interpersonal conflict. Okay? So this one is actually the two things that under the empty chair dialogues that we need to be finding out. So from clear approach of the dream word is actually is an essential message. He believes that dream is a royal road to the integration. So dream are to be experienced, not to interpretations. 所以你是经历这个过程哈。So the dreamer 100% responsible for all dream image. If your client dreams of a monster murdering and involves victim, both the monster and the victim are considered as the manifestations of the dreamer. OK， 所以梦中的每一个角色当中，其实回到来client 本质的一个角度去分析的。So the dreamer owns the dream whether he wants to or not. The therapist does not interpret. The interpretation is a job of the client themselves. OK， 所以如果用梦这个 dream words 的 strategy 的话，一定是 client 自己去领的，不是 therapist 不会介入他的任何的一个梦境的一个情况。Okay, not like what we're using the storyline to let the client to sleep. Okay, this one is actually under the Gestalt therapy. They were not using the strategies. Okay, so can be compatible with the multicultural work. Anti-chair technique might help bicultural and culture diverse clients living in the white dominant cultures develop their self-awareness and live more authentically. But the emotional focus can be inconsistent within collectivism, culture's values, and with the cultural rules about the emotion expressions. Okay, so this is why before I go into this part, you need to know about the multicultural perspective things. It's actually while you are using the strategies, it's actually that we need to know about. Okay, so it's like just now mentioned, the Gestalt therapy is actually there are more evidence that this therapy's way. First was against the research, and all research shows that Gestalt therapy has a moderate positive effect, and the research suggests Gestalt therapy is less effective than cognitive and behavioral treatments. Okay, this one is actually under the research that they'll have mentions on because it's not easier for the Gestalt therapy. It's actually we need to be seen for both sides, for the therapist and the client. 它的有效度其实是很难去评估它的那个状态的部分。So this one is actually what the Gestalt therapy part. Okay, so the common techniques that we will be using under the play therapy, visualization. Children can draw the current framing, and children draw themselves as they like to be, what their man looks like when they are older, how they will be much younger, and draw the emotion response to the story, dream, or fantastic. Okay, and besides that, okay, we can be using play to work out their problems in the symbolical, learn to know and channel their own emotions more effectively, learn to enter into the relationship, the trust for other person, and help to normalize any deviations. Yeah. Then the use of the toys. Yeah. This one is actually as like what we have been mentioned on chapter 1 also. Okay, there will be have the different types of the play toys that we have. Okay, but of course this one is the sensing. Okay, the sensations one that touch, healing, and sound, smelling and tasting. So if in our center or kindergarten we have the sensory garden, it's actually is really useful for us to do the play therapy also. Okay. So importance of the therapies. Okay, aspect. We must be emotionally mature and be able to avoid becoming emotionally over involved with the child. Must be in contact with the child themselves. So the therapy who value their own creativity, ability to play will also be able to allow children to play their creativity and spontaneously. Okay? Then besides that, the boundary and the limits. It brings the therapist and the child in the contact with everyday life and anchors the season to reality and emphasize here and now. So we need to give the structures, okay, that is building up the therapeutic relationships among the children and build the children's self-control and make them to aware of themselves, responsibility toward the therapy seasons and the playroom and themselves also. Okay, so it means that they need to be responsible on therapies and the parent and themselves. Okay， 就是刚刚一开始就讲到人与自己、人与人跟人环境的部分。And by means of the boundaries, the child experience how it's feel to make choice and take responsibility. So in the Gestalt play therapy room, we must have the clear boundaries for the children also. It provides security and predictability within the therapeutic situation and provide consistent in the playroom to ensure that the child play in the safely environment. Okay, so the first season usually deal with the child and caregiver parents present in the simple language, and the child respond with their feelings and can do some assessment on it also. Okay, play with child is absent for the caregiver, then review with parents. Okay, this one is actually more likely is the therapeutic seasons that we offer the experiment to try at home. And finally, children pick a closing activity to do with the caregiver of all the therapies. Okay, so the big pictures, what we need to be looked to is to build up firstly, build up the relationship with the client first, and making contact, confirm the child's sense of the self and emotional expressions, and self-nurturing. Lastly, terminations. Okay, usually they will be using after 3 to 6 months. Okay， 所以这个就是 terminations 话，就是他要 proceed 到他自己的 lifestyle， 不会在这个 play therapy range 里面再继续走的。So the Gestalt therapy has been shown to be effectively. Similarly, Gestalt therapy has been shown effective to evidence is limited also. Okay, Gestalt therapy promotes awareness, non-symptom evaluations of behavior modifications. Although most of the experiments not set up the adequately assess Gestalt therapy strength, it has been shown to elevate symptoms as well as other modalities such as CBT in most cases. Okay, because Gestalt play therapy based solidly on the theory of the Gestalt therapy, so it means that it's actually have the solid theory to be supporting us to do the interpretations and the assessment for your process also. But the limit research has shown that positive result, okay, the contact with the autism child, sexual variance, social phobia, and insurance also. And so some of the research that is actually have shown the positive results on it. Then practice with the children suffering from the behaviorals, developing disease orders, is actually they're using the Gestalt play therapy on it for the child also. Okay. So this one is the overview for the Gestalt play therapy. Then we will be until here for Gestalt part. Okay. Then now for Krista and Xiaoqi, you arrange for the same play time for yourself. And for this chapters for today, we will be until here. And then the things that you need to be done for the discussions forums. Okay. For today, we did not have anything that you need to do about this one, okay? Discuss about the human test, okay? This you need to be discussed on. Then this is the overall part for humanities and insights theory, okay? Then after that, next week, we'll be coming into family play, feeder play, and ecosystemic play therapy, okay? So then another week, okay, it's coming into our study weeks already, okay? The final exam time schedule is coming up already, but I was thinking for Ms. Kong to add on for the MPU subject first, and then I will be sent inside the group. But later I check on play therapy is on which day and then what time. Okay. Then for today we'll be until here. Okay. Chris and Xiaoqing, you both of you spending time to go through your same play therapy by yourself, and then you need to be submit on it. Okay, then reminding again for your group assignment, it will be due on coming 10. Is that okay? If not wrong, it's 10. Okay. So now others, okay, coming Monday. Okay, then remember to be submit to me. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.